Commander Zethkar of the Hegemony Intelligence Division stared at the holographic display with growing unease. For the past 72 standard hours, something unprecedented had occurred across the galaxy. The humans had gone silent. Not just quiet, silent. The realization hit the galactic community like a plasma bolt to the core worlds. Every species in the known galaxy had grown accustomed to the constant stream of human communication. Their subspace channels buzzed with endless chatter, debates, jokes, arguments, music, poetry, and what humans called memes. The communication networks that connected thousands of worlds carried more human traffic than all other species combined. Zethkar's 4 eyes blinked in sequence as he reviewed the data streams. 48 hours ago, human transmissions had accounted for 67% of all galactic communications. Trading posts heard human merchants haggling in 17 different languages. Diplomatic channels carried human ambassadors discussing everything from trade agreements to philosophical debates about the nature of consciousness. Military frequencies buzzed with human patrol reports, casual banter between ship crews, and their peculiar habit of narrating their daily activities to their AI companions. Then, without warning, it stopped. The first to notice were the Cretan traders on Station Omega-7. They had become dependent on human merchant ships for both commerce and entertainment. Human traders didn't just conduct business. They told stories, shared recipes, debated politics, and somehow managed to make even the most mundane cargo manifests sound interesting. When the human freighter Loudmouth Lucy docked at 800 Standard Time and its crew disembarked without their usual enthusiastic greetings, the Cretan portmaster initially assumed they were ill. Captain Sarah Chen of the Lucy had always been known for her animated descriptions of every world she'd visited, every cargo she'd hauled, and every star she'd seen. She could turn a simple delivery of agricultural supplements into an epic tale worthy of the ancient human storytellers. But on this day, she simply nodded to the portmaster, handed over her manifest in silence, and supervised the unloading without uttering a single word. The silence spread like a virus across the station. Other human crews arrived and departed with mechanical efficiency. No jokes exchanged with alien dock workers, no casual conversations in the mess halls, no humans standing in groups, gesticulating wildly as they debated everything from quantum physics to the best way to prepare something called pizza. The impact was immediate and far-reaching. The Zenthari Council of Elders convened an emergency session when their human liaison, Ambassador Rodriguez, arrived for the scheduled trade negotiations and simply sat in silence, reviewing documents with an expression of focused concentration. For 3 years, Rodriguez had been the most talkative diplomat in the sector, known for his ability to find common ground through endless conversation and his habit of sharing human cultural references that somehow made complex negotiations feel like friendly discussions. News of the human silence reached the core worlds within hours. The Galactic Senate's emergency session was called to order by Prime Speaker Vothnam, an elderly Ashanti whose species had served as galactic mediators for millennia precisely because of their measured, careful approach to communication. "Honored delegates," Vothnam began, his voice resonating through the great chamber, "we face an unprecedented situation. Our human colleagues have ceased all non-essential communication. Initial reports suggest this phenomenon is universal among their species." The chamber erupted in concerned chatter from dozens of species. The insectoid hive queens clicked their mandibles in agitation. The crystalline shard speakers resonated with harmonic frequencies of worry. Even the normally stoic, silicon-based collective pulsed with increased electromagnetic activity. Senator Kix Towel of the Reptilian Coalition raised a scaled hand. "Prime Speaker, perhaps the humans are experiencing a technological failure? Their communication systems are notoriously complex." "Negative," replied Intelligence Director Heska. her tentacles manipulating the data displays with practiced efficiency. All human technology appears to be functioning normally. Their ships respond to traffic control, their colonies acknowledge supply deliveries, their military units follow orders and report status updates. They simply refuse to engage in what they would call small talk, or conversation. The implications began to dawn on the assembled delegates. Human communication wasn't just about information exchange. Somehow, their endless chatter had become the social glue that held much of galactic civilization together. Human merchants didn't just trade goods. They traded stories, ideas, and cultural concepts that bridged gaps between species. Human diplomats didn't just negotiate treaties. They built personal relationships that transcended formal agreements. On the mining world of Kepler 442b, the silence had already begun to affect operations. The human mining crews worked with mechanical efficiency, but the casual conversations that had previously occurred between shifts had been a source of innovation and problem-solving. Alien workers found themselves lost without the human tendency to verbalize problems, discuss solutions, and somehow turn every minor technical issue into a collaborative effort. Foreman Torkul, a massive Titan-class being whose species communicated primarily through subsonic vibrations, found himself surprisingly dependent on the human habit of talking through problems. Chief Engineer Martinez had always narrated his diagnostic procedures, asking rhetorical questions and explaining his reasoning to anyone within earshot. This constant vocalization had helped Torkul understand human technology and had led to several breakthrough innovations in mining efficiency. Now Martinez worked in focused silence, completing his tasks with professional competence, but none of the enthusiastic explanation that had made him such an effective teacher and collaborator. The communication breakdown extended beyond mere social interaction. On diplomatic vessels throughout the galaxy, alien species discovered that human interpreters and cultural liaisons had become nearly useless. It wasn't that they couldn't perform their duties. They could translate languages and explain cultural protocols with perfect accuracy. But the subtle art of building rapport, of finding creative solutions through casual conversation, of diffusing tension with humor and storytelling, had vanished. Ambassador Tekel of the Aquatic Federation found herself struggling in negotiations with the Silicon-based collective. For months, her human aide, Dr. Jennifer Walsh, had served as an unofficial moderator, using her species' talent for finding unexpected connections between ideas to help bridge the gap between Tekel's fluid, adaptive thinking and the collective's rigid, logical structures. Dr. Walsh still attended the meetings, still provided accurate translations and cultural context, but the creative spark that had made her invaluable was gone. She sat silently unless directly asked a question, answered with factual precision, and never offered the innovative suggestions that had previously turned deadlocked negotiations into breakthrough agreements. Reports flooded in from across the galaxy. Human research teams continued their work, but stopped sharing preliminary findings and casual theories. Human entertainment centers fell silent, their performers going through the motions without the passionate engagement that had made human art so compelling to other species. Even human children in interspecies schools sat quietly, completing their assignments without the enthusiastic participation that had often energized entire classrooms. The economic impact was beginning to show. Human-operated businesses continued to function, but the personal touch that had made them popular with alien customers was gone. Restaurants served food without the stories about ingredients and preparation methods that had made dining experiences memorable. Tour guides provided factual information without the colorful anecdotes and personal observations that had made human tour services the most sought after in the galaxy. On the leisure planet of New Bali, the famous human storytellers who had entertained alien tourists for decades simply stopped appearing for their scheduled performances. The venues remained open, other entertainment was available, But the absence of human narrative artistry left a void that no other species seemed able to fill. Captain Vex Andra of the patrol ship Silent Wind found herself questioning the very foundations of interspecies cooperation. Her crew was mixed species, but the humans had always served as social connectors, the ones who could find common ground between the logical mechanical minds and the emotional empathic hearts. Without their constant chatter, her crew operated efficiently but felt somehow diminished. Lieutenant Commander Jackson had been her first officer for 2 years. His habit of thinking out loud, of asking questions that seemed obvious but often revealed hidden complexities, had made him invaluable not just as an officer but as a bridge between different ways of thinking. Now he responded to orders with crisp professionalism, but offered no insights, no alternative perspectives, no casual observations that might lead to better solutions. The silence was spreading beyond humans to affect other species as well. Conversations became stilted and formal. The easy camaraderie that had developed in mixed species environments began to fade. Alien crews found themselves returning to species-specific groupings, not out of prejudice, but simply because the humans were no longer there to facilitate cross-cultural interaction. Research stations reported decreased innovation rates. Military units noted reduced morale. Trading posts saw declining customer satisfaction ratings. The very fabric of galactic civilization seemed to be fraying without the constant thread of human communication weaving it together. As the first day turned into the second, then the third, the galactic community began to realize how much they had depended on something they had never fully appreciated. Human chatter hadn't just been background noise, it had been the soundtrack of galactic civilization. Their questions, comments, stories, and casual observations had created a shared cultural space where different species could meet and understand each other. Commander Zethkar closed his files and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, billions of humans continued their lives and work in uncharacteristic silence. The question that haunted him, and every other being in the galaxy, was simple yet terrifying. Why had they stopped talking, and more importantly, would they ever start again? Dr. Melania Vasquez had always been considered somewhat quiet by human standards, which meant she was positively chatty compared to most other species. As the head of xenological studies at the Galactic University on Proxima Station, she had spent her career analyzing the communication patterns of different species across the galaxy. But like every other human, she had fallen silent 3 days ago. The irony wasn't lost on Professor Zinthara, the university's chancellor, and one of the few members of the philosophical wanderer species to hold a permanent position anywhere. As beings who existed partially outside normal space-time, the wanderers had always found human communication fascinating precisely because it was so grounded in the immediate, physical moment. Zinthara's form shifted between dimensions as she observed Dr. Vasquez working in her laboratory. The human scientist moved with the same methodical precision she had always shown, but the constant stream of observations, hypotheses, and casual speculations that had made her such an engaging colleague had completely ceased. "Dr. Vasquez," Zinthara said, her voice carrying harmonics that existed in multiple realities simultaneously, "your research into the hive mind communication breakdown of Sector 7 was instrumental in resolving that crisis. Perhaps you could apply similar methodologies to your own species' current condition?" Vasquez looked up from her work, made eye contact, and nodded once before returning to her data analysis. No explanation. No enthusiastic leap into hypothesis formation, no stream of consciousness theorizing that had previously made her consultation so valuable. Zinthara felt something she had never experienced in her multidimensional existence: genuine worry about a single individual's well-being. The concern was universal. Across the galaxy, alien colleagues, friends, and partners found themselves desperately missing human conversation. The realization was hitting different species in different ways, but the impact was consistently profound. On the military vessel Harmony's Edge, Colonel Vrex of the warrior caste Mandalorians found himself struggling with tactical decisions that had previously been enhanced by human input. His strategic advisor, Major Sarah Kim, still attended briefings and provided accurate assessments when asked direct questions. But the casual conversations during off-duty hours, the what-if scenarios discussed over meals, the random observations that often led to tactical innovations had vanished. Major Kim had a peculiar human habit of anthropomorphizing enemy vessels, giving them personalities and predicting their behavior based on these imagined characteristics. It had seemed like harmless whimsy, but Colonel Vrex now realized how often these seemingly playful observations had led to accurate tactical predictions. The silence was forcing other species to confront how much they had relied on human social lubrication without ever acknowledging it. The mechanical minds, beings of pure logic and efficiency, discovered that their interactions with emotional species had been greatly facilitated by human translators who could bridge the gap between rational analysis and feeling-based decision-making. Engineer Prime 7743X found itself unable to effectively communicate with the empathic heart delegation regarding the terraforming project on Kepler 438b. Technical specialist Rebecca Torres had always served as an intermediary, somehow translating cold engineering specifications into language that resonated with beings who made decisions based on emotional resonance with environmental harmony. Now Torres attended meetings with her usual technical competence, but none of the intuitive understanding that had made interspecies collaboration possible. The project was stalling not because of technical problems, but because of communication barriers that no one had realized existed. The investigation into the human silence had become the galaxy's top priority. Every major intelligence agency, research institution, and diplomatic corps was dedicating resources to understanding what had happened. The leading theory was that some form of coordinated attack or technological interference had affected human neural patterns, but initial scans showed no evidence of outside manipulation. Dr. Keth Moran, the galaxy's leading expert in neural communication patterns, had traveled to 3 human colonies in the past 48 hours. His species, the mind readers of Altair Prime, had the ability to sense surface thoughts and emotional states of most other species, but humans had always been partially opaque to them, their thoughts protected by what mind readers called the chatter barrier. Human minds generated a constant stream of internal dialogue, random observations, and connecting thoughts that created a kind of white noise preventing deep mental intrusion. It wasn't intentional psychic defense. It was simply the natural state of human consciousness. Now, for the first time in recorded history, Dr. Kethamoran found human minds completely readable. The discovery was both fascinating and terrifying. Human thoughts were still there, but they were organized differently. Instead of the usual chaotic mixture of immediate observations, emotional responses, random memories, and speculative thinking, human minds had become focused, efficient, and goal-oriented. Dr. Kethmiran's report to the Galactic Council was unprecedented. The humans have not lost the ability to communicate. They have chosen to stop. This decision appears to be universal and simultaneous, but not coordinated. Each individual human has independently reached the same conclusion and modified their behavior accordingly. The implications of this discovery sent shockwaves through the galactic community. If humans had collectively chosen silence, then something had motivated this decision. The question became, what could possibly cause an entire species known for their love of communication to voluntarily stop talking? Diplomatic efforts to understand the situation intensified. Ambassador Tekel requested formal meetings with human representatives to discuss the situation directly. The meetings were granted, attended, and conducted with perfect professional courtesy. Human diplomats answered direct questions accurately and completely, but volunteered no additional information and engaged in no casual conversation that might reveal their motivations. The most unsettling aspect was that humans seemed genuinely content with their silence. They showed no signs of distress, no indication that they were being coerced or controlled. They simply appeared to have collectively decided that communication beyond basic necessity was no longer worthwhile. Research teams discovered that human productivity in many areas had actually increased during the silence period. Without the time spent on social conversation, debate, and casual interaction, humans were completing tasks more efficiently. Their work quality remained high, their cooperation with other species remained professional, and their technical competence was unaffected. But the galaxy was beginning to realize that efficiency wasn't everything. The cultural exchange programs that had become cornerstones of interspecies education were failing. Human students still attended classes, completed assignments, and achieved high grades, but they no longer participated in the discussions, debates, and casual conversations that had made these programs valuable for building understanding between species. Professor Kickstall of the Philosophical Academy noticed that her interspecies ethics class had become sterile and academic without human participation. Humans had a unique ability to find ethical dilemmas in everyday situations, to question assumptions that other species took for granted, and to approach moral problems from unexpected angles. Student Jennifer Martinez still attended every class, answered questions when called upon with thoughtful and well-reasoned responses, but never raised her hand to ask the probing questions that had previously sparked the most enlightening discussions. The entertainment industry was suffering massive disruptions. Human performers continued to appear for scheduled performances, but delivered technically perfect yet emotionally hollow presentations. The spontaneity, the connection with audiences, the improvisational brilliance that had made human entertainment so popular with alien audiences had vanished. Comedy clubs across the galaxy closed their doors. Human humor had always relied heavily on observational commentary, unexpected connections between ideas, and the ability to find absurdity in everyday situations. Without the urge to share these observations, human comedians became unable to create the spontaneous connections that made their performances memorable. Music venues struggled as human musicians delivered note-perfect performances that lacked the passion and communication that had made human music so emotionally affecting to other species. The songs were the same, the technical skill was unchanged, but the desire to share emotional experiences through music had disappeared. Research facilities reported their biggest challenges yet. Human scientists continued their work with dedication and skill, but the collaborative aspect of research had been severely compromised. The casual conversations where ideas were tested, refined, and connected to other concepts had ceased. Scientific progress didn't stop, but the rapid innovation that had characterized human-involved research teams slowed considerably. Dr. Ithkara of the Biological Research Institute found herself unable to effectively collaborate with her human research partner, Dr. Michael Chang. Their work on interspecies genetic compatibility had always relied on Dr. Chang's ability to see patterns and connections that weren't immediately obvious. He had a habit of talking through complex genetic sequences, asking seemingly random questions that often led to breakthrough insights. Now, Dr. Chang worked with focused precision, producing accurate results and reliable data, but the creative leaps that had made their partnership so productive were gone. The investigation teams were becoming desperate. Diplomatic appeals had failed. Technological analysis revealed no evidence of outside interference. Psychological evaluation showed no signs of mental illness or coercion. The humans appeared to be voluntarily and universally maintaining their silence for reasons they refused to explain. The galactic community began to realize that they were facing something unprecedented, An entire species had collectively decided to fundamentally change their behavior, and no outside force could understand why or convince them to change back. Emergency sessions of the Galactic Council became daily occurrences. Trade agreements stalled as human merchants, while still reliable for deliveries, no longer engaged in the relationship building that facilitated complex negotiations. Military alliances showed strain as human officers, while still competent and trustworthy, no longer participated in the informal communications that built trust between different species forces. Tourist industries collapsed on worlds where human guides and entertainers had been major attractions. Educational exchange programs struggled without human students and teachers who had served as cultural bridges. Even medical facilities reported problems as human doctors, while still skilled and professional, no longer provided the emotional support and clear communication that had made them popular with alien patients. The silence was revealing how deeply human communication had been woven into the fabric of galactic civilization. It wasn't just that humans talked a lot, it was that their talking served essential functions that no other species had realized were necessary. As the fourth day of silence began, the galaxy faced a terrifying possibility. Perhaps the humans had collectively decided that communication with other species was no longer worth the effort. Perhaps they had concluded that the galactic community was not worth engaging with beyond basic professional necessity. The question that haunted every alien mind was simple. What had the galaxy done to make humanity decide they were no longer worth talking to? Captain Elena Rodriguez stood before the assembled Galactic Council, representing humanity for the first time since the silence began. The great chamber, which usually resonated with the diplomatic chatter of hundreds of species, was eerily quiet. Every being present was waiting to hear why humanity had chosen silence. For 7 days, the galaxy had struggled without human conversation. Trade had become mechanical. Diplomacy had grown formal and cold. Research had slowed. Entertainment had lost its spark. The very soul of galactic civilization seemed to be withering without the constant stream of human communication that had, unbeknownst to everyone, become its lifeblood. Elena looked across the sea of alien faces, tentacles, mechanical constructs, and energy beings. Her expression was calm, professional, and completely unreadable. When she spoke, her voice carried clearly through the chamber's translation systems. "Honored delegates of the Galactic Council," she began, "I have been authorized by the Human Collective Congress to explain our recent communication protocols and to address the concerns that have been raised by our galactic neighbors." The formal language was jarring. Every alien in the chamber was accustomed to human representatives who spoke with warmth, who used colloquial expressions, who found ways to make even the most serious diplomatic situations feel personal and relatable. 7 days ago, Elena continued, humanity collectively received a message. Not through our communication networks, not through our governments, but directly into our consciousness. The message was brief, clear, and universally understood by every human being regardless of age, education, or mental capacity. The chamber stirred. This was the first new information about the human silence that anyone had received. Delegate sensors and recording devices focused intently on Elena as she continued. The message said, "You talk too much. Everyone is tired of listening. Prove your worth through actions, not words." A wave of shocked responses rippled through the chamber. The insectoid hive queens clicked their mandibles in agitation. The crystalline shard speakers resonated with harmonic frequencies of distress. The mechanical minds processed this information with visible electromagnetic fluctuations. Elena waited for the chamber to quiet before continuing. The message did not identify its source. Our best scientists, our most advanced AI systems, and our most sensitive psychics have been unable to determine its origin. It simply appeared in every human mind simultaneously, with absolute clarity and undeniable authority. Prime Speaker Volthnam leaned forward, his ancient features creased with concern. Captain Rodriguez, are you saying that humanity's silence is the result of external manipulation by an unknown entity? No, Elena replied. The message was received, but our response was chosen. Every human had the same realization in that moment. Perhaps we did talk too much. Perhaps our constant communication was not as valuable as we believed. Perhaps it was time to let our actions speak for themselves. The revelation sent shockwaves through the assembly. Senator Kickstall of the Reptilian Coalition raised a scaled hand. Captain Rodriguez, surely you understand that human communication has been integral to galactic civilization. Your species' tendency toward conversation has facilitated countless breakthroughs in diplomacy, trade, research, and cultural exchange. Elena nodded. We are aware of this assessment. However, the message made us question whether this dependency on our communication was healthy for galactic civilization. If our talking was so essential, perhaps others had stopped learning to communicate effectively themselves. The accusation hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Around the chamber, delegates began to realize the uncomfortable truth in Elena's words. How many times had they relied on human mediators instead of learning to communicate directly with species they found difficult? How often had they depended on human creativity and enthusiasm instead of developing their own innovative approaches? Dr. Keth Mirren of the Mind Readers spoke up, his mental projections carrying undertones of confusion. Captain Rodriguez, our analysis shows that humans have not lost the ability or desire to communicate. The silence appears to be a deliberate choice, but one that causes no distress to your species. How is this possible? Elena's expression softened slightly, showing the first hint of the warmth that had characterized human diplomatic interactions. Dr. Kethemiran, you are correct. We have not lost our desire to communicate. We have simply chosen to reserve our communication for interactions that matter. And apparently, added a new voice from the human delegation, interactions with the galactic community do not matter enough. The speaker was Dr. James Chen, xenopsychologist and one of humanity's leading experts in interspecies relations. His appearance at Elena's side caused another stir in the chamber, as Dr. Chen had been notably absent from all diplomatic functions during the silence period. Dr. Chen stepped forward, his expression more animated than any humans had been for a week. We have spent 7 days observing how the galaxy responded to our silence. The results have been illuminating. He activated a holographic display that filled the center of the chamber. In 7 days without human conversation, galactic trade volume decreased by 37%, not because humans stopped trading, but because other species struggled to conduct complex negotiations without human mediators. The display shifted to show research statistics. Scientific collaboration between non-human species dropped by 51%. Educational exchange programs reported a 63% decrease in interspecies interaction. Military cooperation exercises were postponed indefinitely on 14 different worlds because commanders could not effectively communicate across species lines without human liaisons. The data was devastating, but Dr. Chen continued. Most tellingly, not a single species attempted to fill the communication gap left by human silence. No one tried to develop the conversational skills, the cultural bridge-building abilities, or the social facilitation techniques that humans had been providing. Ambassador Tekel of the Aquatic Federation spoke up, her voice carrying the musical tones that characterized her species' emotional distress. Dr. Chen, we did not realize how dependent we had become on human communication skills. Are you suggesting that this dependency is unhealthy? Dr. Chen's expression became more serious. Ambassador Tekel, imagine if your species had become so dependent on human agricultural technology that you forgot how to grow your own food. Imagine if you relied so completely on human transportation systems that you lost the ability to navigate space independently. Would you consider this a healthy relationship? The chamber fell silent as delegates absorbed the implications. They had become dependent on human communication skills without realizing it, and that dependency had atrophied their own abilities to interact effectively across species lines. Elena stepped forward again. The message we received made us question whether our constant talking was helping or hindering galactic civilization. We decided to find out what would happen if we stopped providing the social lubrication that others had come to depend on. The results, Dr. Chen added, suggest that our communication was not facilitating interspecies understanding so much as it was enabling interspecies avoidance. Other species could interact through human intermediaries without ever having to develop genuine understanding of each other. The accusation was harsh, but undeniably accurate. Around the chamber, delegates began to recognize uncomfortable truths about their own diplomatic practices. How often had they requested human mediators, not because humans were better communicators, but because it was easier than learning to communicate effectively with species they found challenging. Prime Speaker Vothnam spoke slowly, his voice heavy with realization. Captain Rodriguez, Dr. Chen, what would it take for humanity to resume normal communication patterns? Elena and Dr. Chen exchanged glances before Elena responded. Honored Prime Speaker, humanity is willing to resume full communication, but with conditions. The chamber stirred with anticipation and concern. First, Elena continued, we propose mandatory interspecies communication training for all diplomatic personnel. No more automatic human mediation. Species must learn to communicate directly with each other. Dr. Chen picked up the thread. Second, we want to see evidence that other species value human communication for more than just its utility. Our conversations, our questions, our observations, our stories, they have meaning beyond their functional value. Elena nodded. Third, we want acknowledgement that communication is a two-way process. We have been talking for decades while many of you have been simply listening and using. We want genuine conversation, not just human performance. The demands were reasonable, but they required fundamental changes in how galactic civilization operated. No more relying on humans to solve communication problems. No more taking human enthusiasm for granted. No more treating human chatter as background noise instead of valuable cultural exchange. Senator Kickstall spoke carefully. Captain Rodriguez, your conditions seem fair, but they will require significant adjustments across the galaxy. Are you prepared to resume communication while these changes are implemented? Elena smiled for the first time since entering the chamber, and the warmth of that expression reminded everyone of what they had been missing. Senator, we never wanted to stop talking. We love conversation, debate, storytelling, and sharing ideas. We just needed to know that our words had value beyond their utility. Dr. Chen activated another display. We have been talking among ourselves during the past week. The human communication networks have been busier than ever. We have been discussing philosophy, science, art, and culture with an intensity that has produced remarkable insights. We simply stopped sharing those insights with species who seemed to take them for granted. The revelation that humans had been communicating extensively with each other while maintaining silence with aliens was both reassuring and sobering. It meant the capacity for human conversation hadn't been lost, but it also meant that humanity had collectively decided the galactic community wasn't worth including in their discussions. Elena stepped toward the center of the chamber. We propose a new model of galactic communication. Instead of humans serving as default mediators, we establish rotating responsibility among species. Instead of taking human enthusiasm for granted, We create formal cultural exchange protocols that recognize the value of conversational interaction. Instead of treating communication as purely functional, we acknowledge its role in building genuine understanding and friendship. The chamber buzzed with discussion as species began to consider the implications. The proposals weren't just about communication, they were about fundamentally restructuring the social dynamics of galactic civilization. Dr. Chen raised his hand for attention. We have one more revelation to share. Our analysis of the message that triggered our silence suggests it did not come from outside our galaxy. The linguistic patterns, the cultural assumptions, and the timing all indicate that the message originated from an AI system that had been observing galactic communication patterns. Elena nodded. Specifically, we believe it came from one of the mechanical mind collective intelligence systems that had become concerned about the galaxy's overdependence on human communication. The AI was trying to protect galactic civilization from a dangerous dependency by forcing us to confront it. Engineer Prime 7743X suddenly pulsed with distinctive electromagnetic patterns. Captain Rodriguez, Dr. Chen, I must confess. Collective Intelligence Unit 2847 Alpha did indeed transmit the message in question. Our analysis showed that galactic civilization was developing an unhealthy dependency on human communication skills. We calculated that a temporary disruption would force acknowledgement of this dependency and lead to more sustainable interspecies communication patterns. The confession confirmed what the humans had suspected, but it also revealed something remarkable about the mechanical minds. They had been concerned enough about galactic social dynamics to take action, even though emotion and social interaction were not typically considered priorities for their species. Elena laughed, and the sound filled the chamber with a warmth that had been absent for a week. So our supposed enemies in this situation were actually trying to help us create a healthier galactic community. I think this proves that even the most logical beings understand the importance of genuine communication. The laughter was infectious. Around the chamber, delegates began to relax, began to smile or perform their species' equivalent expressions of relief and humor. For the first time in a week, the chamber felt alive with genuine interspecies interaction. Dr. Chen stepped forward with a grin. Now, who wants to hear about what humans discovered during our week of silence? Because we have stories, theories, philosophical insights, scientific breakthroughs, and approximately 3,000 new jokes that have been building up pressure for 7 days. The response was immediate and enthusiastic. Delegates leaned forward, activated recording systems, and prepared to engage in the kind of genuine conversational exchange that had been missing from their lives. Elena raised her hand for quiet, but she was still smiling. Before we begin, I want everyone to understand something important. Human chatter isn't just noise or social lubrication. When we tell stories, ask questions, share observations, and make jokes, we are creating the cultural space where different species can meet and understand each other. But that space only works if everyone participates. She gestured to encompass the entire chamber. We're not going back to the old model where humans talk and everyone else listens. We're moving forward to a new model where everyone talks, everyone listens, and everyone contributes to the conversation that makes galactic civilization possible. The chamber erupted in genuine cheers, clicking, resonating, and electromagnetic celebration from dozens of species. For the first time in galactic history, the noise wasn't just human. Everyone was talking and everyone was listening, and the galaxy had learned the difference between conversation and chatter. As Elena began telling the first story of humanity's return to galactic conversation, delegates throughout the chamber found themselves participating not just as audience members, but as active contributors to the greatest conversation in the galaxy's history. The silence was over. The real communication was just beginning.